my parents began this business in 1938, and so I'm the next generation. This is my baby brother, Ken, and this is my first cousin, Yulin. So it is a family business.
Look at that. All the magic words. Fried, wonton skin, sugar syrup.
It'll make your dentist very happy because it sticks to your teeth. You know, there's hardly any really Chinese markets in Chinatown anymore. It's unfortunate, but I think it's going across the whole entire U.S. with all the Chinatowns.
I travel the world writing a lot about food, and especially about those behind the food. How cultures and cuisine intersect, interact, and intertwine. Inspired by the uniquely Chinese-American dish, General Tso's chicken, this is Tso'l Food, an American journey through the Chinese kitchen. I'm Gerald Tan. Los Angeles has an enigma few cities can only dream of. A tinseled land embraced by the ocean, sun-kissed in perpetual summer, the home of Hollywood and all the glamorous trappings of the silver screen. Waves of Chinese people have continued to land on these shores, starting from the mid-19th century during the Gold Rush, then during the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad, and again after immigration laws were loosened in the 1960s. The earliest migrants settled in a neighborhood that had to make way for LA's main train terminal, Union Station. The residents were relocated a few blocks over to what was then named New Chinatown, the year 1938. And that's also when the story of one legacy business begins.
Back then, New Chinatown, frankly, it was an ethnic tourist trap. And a lot of us Chinese who lived in LA back then really didn't go to Chinatown much. But when we did, we'd stop by Phoenix Bakery. You know, it's just something that's been a Los Angeles tradition for so long.
Yulin has improved on some of maybe the procedures in making some of our products, but the ingredients are the same. Our recipes are basically the same. Is that correct?
Well, most of them are from my parents or from Kathy's parents, and what I had to figure out is how to, you know, like make the difference between making small and large, you know. And my dad, when he mixes by sight. And when I mix by temperature and I mix by time.
Over the decades, Phoenix Bakery has become synonymous with an array of handmade treats. Strawberry cake, syrup-drenched butterflies, almond cookies, seasonal mooncakes, and a confection from my childhood, lo popeng, winter melon compote and robed in flaky pastry. Think of it as a distant cousin of the almond croissant, but in lieu of butter.
We kind of rolled it by hand, each individual pieces, with basically the flour and the lard and the water.
Oh, you said the magic word.
Okay.
Did we all hear it? Lard.
Okay.
Everything tastes better with lard.
Well, yes, it does, but it's also a bad word too. Well, basically, the winter melon pastry is this item here, and this is the Chinese winter melon. And this is what makes the layers on the cake is actually two types of dough that they're putting together.
One dough has just lard and flour. The other adds water. You know how water and oil repel each other? Voila! The basic science and wonder of Chinese puff pastry.
What she did was she folded the lard and the flour into the water dough and formed that ball. And then she rolls it out. Okay, then she puts the winter melon in there and she folds it together.
It's almost like a big fat dumpling at that
Yes,
point,
that's all
right?
it is. And then she flips it over to give that nice flat appearance.
Ah. The speed of her fingers at that point, that's just remarkable. And there's something you cannot get.
It's
You
just
can't make it with a machine, can you?
No, because of it'll destroy the layers. She's gonna dock it to let the steam out so they don't explode
Right.
when you bake. And then she's gonna ID it with an old Phoenix stamp.
Back in the day, Chinese migrants called California Gamsan, Gold Mountain. They envisioned riches, but were instead met by prejudice and hardship.
They stayed because they didn't earn enough money for passage back. Even for those who did earn money, they still had to send money home so that their parents and their family can eat and survive.
For lack of a better word, they were stuck in this new land. They formed their own community and slowly built their fortunes through toil and grit. But here's the thing, fortune is fickle. Phoenix Bakery is something of an anomaly, for many Chinatown businesses have not shared their longevity, and the empty storefronts today reveal deepening financial doldrums. Even Far East Plaza, a once vibrant commercial complex, is a shadow of its former self. Yet the building is in the throes of a renaissance, spearheaded by young blood. You chose to open in Chinatown, Los Angeles, at a time when a lot of businesses are moving out. What drove that decision?
Being in Chinatown, for me, my family has a long history here. For me, I feel like it's such a shame that we all moved out and then we neglect and didn't reinvest more money into this place that gave us our start in the first place. If we don't share it with the rest of Los Angeles, then they're not going to be able to appreciate it as well.
Pearl River Deli is an interesting restaurant. It really is the next generation, the second generation of Chinese cuisine, where a second generation Toisanese chef has decided to create basically artisan version of the foods that he grew up with.
Since this was filmed, Chef Johnny's business has outgrown its space and is moving to a bigger location down the street. But he continues to solidify his reputation as a master of char siu, barbecued roast pork. The minute you open the oven, you just want to stick your face in there.
Yeah.
Oh, it's bubbling and sizzling. Look at that char. I guess that's why they call it char siu. No, actually, not really.
No, they got char siu because cha in Chinese means fork.
Right.
And they used to roast it on what would look like a big pitchfork.
Ah.
So it means fork roasted.
I love it. Okay, so tell me what you've done to this piece of pork.
So we use a nice marbled cut of the pork collar.
Okay.
It's kind of by the pork shoulder. First, we marinate it the night before, and our marinade We try to use a more traditional marinade, no red food coloring.
Okay, so it marinates overnight and then you slow roast it.
Yes, slow roast at very low temperature, and then when we need it, we'll roast it again by the higher temperature to get the caramelization on the outside.
That's sensational. Can you remember some of your early memories of char stew? Because I feel like this is char stew, you know, it's sort of like the Asian bacon.
In Cantonese culture, like char stew, like rice boxes or like rice plates
Yes.
are very common. So one of my early memories is we were taking a boat from my home area, which is in the Toisan area, into Hong Kong, and on the boat we had char stew rice, just in styrofoam boxes.
We know that about 75% of those early immigrants were from the Taishan area, and 25% came from the Zhongshan area. The Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 was the first law in U.S. history that singled out one ethnic race to keep out of its borders. It came after the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad, where the Chinese workers were no longer needed. For the longest time, there was no immigration from China. And then what happened? Ping pong diplomacy opened up China's bamboo curtain, and then we started getting immigration because of family reunification.
Charting the political winds of the time and how they dictated migration patterns shed light on the kind of regional Chinese dishes Americans were exposed to and how they're evolving even today. How many Chinese restaurants have you personally eaten in your lifetime?
Well, the exact number as of this moment is 7,771. And it was probably in the 1980s, and I decided that Chinese restaurants, good Chinese restaurants, were opening up at such a fast rate that if I didn't start keeping track of where I've eaten, I might inadvertently eat at the same restaurant twice. It's interesting because in the last decade or so, you've seen a sea change in Chinese food in the United States. Because Chinese first came to the United States for the gold rush in the mid-1850s. And from that point in time until mid-1950s, Cantonese food was the only kind of Chinese food you could get in the United States. And then when the immigration laws changed in Immigration Act of 1965 became effective later in the 1960s. You had a new wave of immigration. But the real change is the last 10 years, because that's when you had the massive influx of Chinese students mainland students to U.S. universities.
Enter the Sichuan boom, burgeoning restaurants feeding the city's obsession for tingling peppercorns, which were banned in the US for nearly 40 years until 2005.
Shangri-La Way is a recently opened Sichuan restaurant that's really, in one way, it's riding the wave of new Sichuan food in Los Angeles and in the United States, but on the other hand, it's making its own mark.
How would you describe Sichuan cuisine to someone who's never had it before?
我们的那个麻辣鲜香，那个是我们的那个重庆川菜的独特的味道。我们如果吃我们的每一道菜，都能吃到每一种的味道在里面。都
Is most of Sichuan cuisine spicy?
80%都是辣的吧？对。
More than 20 hallmark flavors give Sichuan cuisine its identity, with mouth-watering terms such as fish fragrant and spicy sesame. The most famous is mala, which simultaneously scorches and soothes with prickly heat, an effect traced to one ineffable spice. Describe Sichuan peppercorns because it's such a distinct flavor and a distinct sensation.
那个花椒是我们重庆的最独特一种调料品，吃到嘴里面感觉麻，但是不腻嘴，很香很舒服的那种感觉。对。
Do you ever have customers who are just so overwhelmed by the mala sensation when they have it for the first time?
对，因为有的，因为有这样的就是从来没来过的，然后吃过一次就感觉太辣了，太辣。但是呢，就非常喜欢这个味道，那他又觉得辣，但是呢又继续想吃，然后对，就是这种感觉，然后满头大汗的，然后一边用纸擦着，一边哎呀太辣了，但是还是继续想吃这道菜，对。
That's me.
以后
I can't do spicy food. Yeah. Wait. Preparing this Scoville-rich delicacy requires lungs of steel, as I discover. Ooh. I do not know how they do this. It's called water-boiled beef, a bit of a misnomer because the meat actually swims in a fiery scarlet lava of oil, stippled with, you guessed it, Sichuan peppercorns.
我们腌牛肉的话，大概在40分钟到1个小时，对，用那个胡椒啊、盐呐、鸡精、味精呐这些腌制，还有鸡蛋，还有那个玉米粉、清油，把它轻轻拉一下、滑一下，因为吃的那个口感更舒服。我们单子熬的有一个sauce，专门做了个水煮的sauce，那个里面就是说了就话就长了，里面因为有很多香料、中药材在里面。 吃着不上火又香。
To reflect the mastery of skills involved, the restaurant christens the dish Kung Fu Boiled Beef. It arrives tableside with a healthy dose of wow factor. The hot oil. Whoa! All right. Okay. Immediately, as that hot oil touches all the spices and chilies, it's sizzling, it's sputtering, you can hear it, but what you can't smell is just this aroma. It's piercing through the air, and it's citrusy, or really floral. And it's also bright red, so it is really a confetti of crimson right now that I guess I'm gonna have to dig in and sweat my way through. Splash, splash, splash. And I'm getting, again, those hits of mala. Slight little tingling sensation, but beautiful, beautiful flavor. Amazing. Xianglahui represents a new tide of LA Chinese restaurants, not just for its cuisine, but also its location in the San Gabriel Valley, affectionately called the SGV or the 626 after its telephone area code. This suburban sprawl east of Los Angeles comprises more than 24 cities, many with majority Latinx or Asian populations.
As China became wealthier and more entrepreneurial and more corporate-minded, then many of those who came from China came as corporate investors. And again, their socioeconomic status is very different. And so that's how we moved eastward to the San Gabriel Valley.
So much of the food scene, especially The Chinese food scene, the Asian food scene is happening in the San Gabriel Valley. Why not open there?
I feel like I belong more in Chinatown because I'm a more Americanized Chinese kid. So a lot of the newer immigrants now, they tend to be more coming straight from China, and they speak Mandarin, and so in some ways I don't feel like I fit in the San Gabriel Valley, so even though I grew up there.
Right. Has Chinatown changed for you over the years?
Yes, Chinatown has definitely changed a lot over the years. When I was young, it was very busy, very bustling. The streets were very crowded.
It used to be a destination part. You came down here, you had dinner, we had bars here, we had entertainment. People came to just walk around and shop a little bit.
Not only was this a destination point, but on the weekends, if you didn't live in Chinatown, you always came back to Chinatown to see your parents or your grandparents.
You go shopping.
You go to the market, you have your dim sum for lunch, and then you go back to wherever you lived. So that has totally changed. The San Gabriel Valley has ceased that.
Fame takes on extra meaning in the city defined by stars. In some streets, you're walking right on them. The titans of entertainment immortalized. Celebrities are everywhere, and the food world is no exception. Back in the San Gabriel Valley, one chef from Beijing has gourmands abuzz after attaining a Michelin star for his restaurant.
那我们那家小馆呢，属于一种就是官府菜或者叫私房菜，它融入了好几个菜系。我们呢还是延续最传统的中国的烹饪方式，30%是当时的菜传下来的。京八件就是北京的8种点心，比如像驴打滚儿、艾窝窝，然后豌豆黄这些都是当时很受宫廷。 皇帝啊，或者那个皇妃啊，他们非常追捧的。
So what makes Bistro Nas so special?
传承和传统的东西能够跟着时代与时俱进的发展，然后又有传统的味道，而且还有时代感。 我们这个呢叫那家小馆，是一个那姓，那姓呢其实也是满族正黄旗的其中的一个姓。这个是由我们这个创始人家里的这些家厨，然后做的这些菜，然后从他家谱里边，然后流传下来的这一道菜。
And I'm sampling one steeped in history, a soup simultaneously delicate and delicious.
每年皇帝都会犒赏他的部队，好的食材，比如像鸡呀、鸭呀、猪啊，部队呢就会接受这些赏赐以后，拿这个来共同烹制一道菜，故此得到今天的黄坛子。这个寓意呢，其实就是皇帝赐给这些军队的礼品，然后这些部队的那个又回赠给皇帝。
Today, Bistro Nas' rendition of the Emperor's Jar starts with a broth of chicken, gammon and ham, finished off with fish maw, abalone and scallop.
吃这个的坛子呢，可以先喝一口汤，加上一点点香菜，然后再喝一口汤，它的味道是不一样的因为香菜的味道呢，就是比较清新放在这里边提香的。第3种是加那个。 腐乳，第4种呢，就是再加那个辣椒。
So the first step I have to do is to taste the broth. So I'm gonna taste this broth. It's still bubbling, and the color, the consistency. Here goes. I'm tasting multiple layers of flavor here. I'm tasting thyme. I'm tasting tradition, Mostly, I think I taste a little luxury. In this country, soup is something you have when you're sick, when you just need comfort food. It's something you have at your desk at work because it's cheap. You know, it's fast, you get it out of a can. This is not that kind of soup at all.
其实对于中餐来说呢，讲究这个汤呢，其实是提取了所有原料的精华，融入到这汤里边。咱就先单说说这个菜。第一遍做它这个底汤的时候，要用小火煮8个小时，然后呢再用大火，就是最大的火，然后再冲1个小时。
Bistro now is truly a game changer as far as Chinese food in the Los Angeles area is concerned. Introduced so many dishes that we really haven't seen here in the United States.
其实我觉得餐饮这个行业要进步啊，就要不断的相互去学习、相互去了解、相互的去超越。
Oh, I think you're being a little humble here, Chef. But really, you know, like when you opened Bistro Nas, do you actually have a vision to perhaps change the dining scene of Los Angeles?
当时是有这个想法，但是其实不光我们，其实也有很多的餐厅也在这么做，只不过就是现在就是关注到我们。对于我个人来说，我觉得是目标就会更高了啊，因为米其林不光有1星，还有2星和3星。其实我现在也是在一边工作一边学习啊。
What do you think, Ken, is the secret of success for this bakery?
Our longevity of our staff. One of our kitchen staff workers probably been here 50 years.
Wow.
He actually retired. And, you know, he called Yulin up and he says, hey, I'm bored at home and I want to come back a couple days a week.
Los Angeles is the city of trends. You know, a lot of food trends as well. We've gone through, you know, paleo, keto, carb-free, fat-free, gluten-free.
Well, we've had people ask, are you gluten-free? We are not.
Our bakery is a facility for a place where you want to reward yourself.
We have generations of very loyal customers that have come in, and we're into 4 generations. Every day we hear, my grandmother brought me here, my mother brought me here, now I'm bringing my children here, and we're very grateful for that kind of support.
I think one of the things that my mom always said is that, you know, good times or bad times, people always eat, okay? And then they always want something sweet, because the sweetness will basically win over anything that's sour.
Whether they are upholding traditions, setting new trends, or both in equal measure, these tastemakers stand at the forefront of Chinese cuisine in the US. A glorious cuisine that ripples and swells and billows with the very personality of the place it calls home, the Big Orange, the City of Angels.